Hey, what's up everybody? It's your boy Tristan Barrocks here, the digital storyteller, and I am going to be doing a tutorial today. And the tutorial is actually talking about how I color corrected, or I am color correcting, or learning how to color correct the Zcam E2. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's go. Let's jump into it. So we're in Final Cut Pro right now, and it is looking quite good. I'm just going to move around a few things just to make it easier for me to track everything in Final Cut Pro. But yeah, we're in Final Cut Pro here, and I have a few clips of my boy O'Shane Howard. He is an amazing creative out of Toronto, Canada. Big up, rep up Toronto, the 6, Drakeland. So this past weekend, I was just testing out the Zcam E2. For those of you that don't know what it is, I'll pull it over here. I think I have it. This is the eCam here. If you can see it, it's just this little bitty camera here, and I've had it for a couple months now. I'm actually working on a review, but one of the things that I like to do when I'm working on a review is to actually test out the camera more than once or twice, or for a week. I need to test it out substantially or significantly so that I can really give you my honest feedback on how the camera is. And I really wanted to kind of put it into different situations. So I've done a low lighting situation, I've done a studio situation, and now I want to do sort of sunrise and sunset. So I myself and O'Shane, we went out and I shot a whole bunch of 4K 60 frames per second shots, and I color corrected it or color graded them. So let's jump to the first clip here. So by default, it doesn't really look like much, to be honest with you. Let me close off one of these things here. There we go. So we can see a little bit better. So this image in and of itself is kind of, it looks kind of washed. It looks actually like I overexposed it, but it actually is exposed correctly. I used all my histograms on my monitors and things of that nature to make sure that was exposed correctly. The main thing with a lot of these cameras, especially when you're shooting with a Zcam, like a cinema camera or an FS5 or anything like that, is you want to land your focus slightly higher than the middle. And why do I say that? Because generally speaking, if you're underexposing instead of overexposing, you're going to introduce a lot more noise into your image. And a way to get around that is by just kind of bringing up or overexposing the conditions of the sensor, or the exposure of the sensor, so that noise doesn't have as much dominance within your image. So that's what I did here. And if we look at our guides, you can see that I have a whole bunch of space to play with on my blacks, and then my white area, my brightest areas, I do have some space. It's not as much. It's probably about 2/3 of the amount of leeway before everything becomes overexposed. But that's okay. That's actually a good place to be in. Now, that being said, I am going to also tell you that I shot, obviously, with the Zcam E2. I shot 60 frames per second in 4K, and I shot with not with Z-Raw, but this is actually ProRes proxy. So it was a lighter file. I just wanted to see what kind of flexibility I had with the ProRes proxy files, and I was shooting with the Z-Log profile. So the Z-Log is basically their flattest profile. I wanted to really get a sense of what the capabilities were. There was no noise reduction put on this footage. It's just is what it is. I'll do a full screen of it so you can see. There is like nothing. There is no sort of post-processing on it yet. Okay. So let's jump right into the first thing that I did. The first thing I did was I sharpened the footage. The reason why I sharpened the footage was because I felt like it was slightly soft. It was a little bit too soft for my liking. And a part of that is because I'm using an adapter. So I'm using like a speed booster in front of the sensor that will adapt my Canon lenses to the camera. But with that, what I find is the image is slightly too soft coming out of the camera. So what I did was I added some sharpness back into the footage, and just to kind of make things look a little bit more crisp. Then what I did was I hit added the color board option. Now, color board, I spoke about this in previous videos. The color board in Final Cut Pro is kind of the place where you start your color correction process. And the reason why I say you start there is because it's not really very flexible. It's very very basic in terms of what you can do. So I took my mid range puck and I drug it down into the blues, or reducing the blues, so that it would bring up the reds and the yellows. Now, if I bring that back up, you can see if I put it back to kind of where it was before I drug it down, it actually had sort of the dark areas and the mid-tone areas a little bit too blue, and I want to kind of warm that up to give that sort of sunset. Again, it's sunset. I want to give those warmer, earthier tones. Now, under saturation, I always kind of pop up my saturation in the middle, and then if I need more saturation, whether in my shadows or my highlights, I'll do such. So, you know, I'll drag that up, and then you could see that it's a little bit more highlighted. I'll leave that as such. And then exposure, I brought my highlights up a bit, but I didn't want to blow out all of the nice sunset options there. And then I brought down my blacks, right? If I reset this is exactly how it looks without anything at all, right? So once I did that exposure, those exposure adjustments, then it gave me a little bit more of a punch, or a little bit more contrast. Let me go to the custom LUT. So this is a custom LUT that I created called Tristan. It's going to be a part of my new custom LUT series. But basically with this one, it actually it does a few different things. It brings down the highlights slightly, brings up the blacks, and softens it, and creates more of a gradation from the brightest part of the image to the darkest part of the image. So that's actually a LUT that I'm not giving away. That is something that's going to be available for purchase if you're interested in that. It's coming down the pipeline. Then I have another custom LUT, which is just one of my finishing LUTs. It kind of gives a little bit more body and a little bit more vibrance to any particular image. And then all I did was I added some film converts. So when I added film convert, is a plugin that allows you to emulate or simulate different film stocks, you know, famous film stocks from back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s type of thing. So when I added that in, then it gave me this sort of finished look here. And the big thing is, a lot of people may be like, well, I can't really see, you know, the detail of the sky, or, you know, the plants or whatever else. First of all, it's spring, so most plants are just budding. There's no leaves. But then also the sky, we already know the sky is bright. It's not blue at dusk. It's usually, you know, a yellowish white. It's going to be overexposed. What we want is, we wanted to kind of get his silhouette, but then we also want to get some of these warmer orangey colors because the sun was really coming down. So that's what that particular shot looks like. Go to the next shot here. I'll just press play on it so you can see. So that's the shot we have here. It's all in slow motion, and again, I used the same sort of technique. Added some sharpness, right? I added a color board to it to just bring some resonance and some body to it. And then I added my custom LUT, which is my Tristan LUT, right? So it took it from this to this. And as you can see too, there was noise in his jacket. So that LUT just really brought down the blacks, or brought the blacks together, so that those elements of noise that were introduced, because we were obviously trying to bring up our exposure of this footage, it doesn't become a distraction anymore. And then I added my custom LUT. When I added my custom LUT, it added a little bit more blue and yellow, and just kind of added those tones that I wanted in there. Now, you may or may not see, depending on how hard you grade the footage, there may be a little bit of banding, but because this is ProRes, You don't really see that at all. There's not really high compression on it. It holds up pretty well. And then lastly, I added my film converts, and then the film convert just kind of brings film grain and introduces that into the picture here. Let me do this one here. So this one was actually sunrise the next day. So we did sunrise the next day, and I knew that this was going to be a cool shot. It looks pretty regular. You know, the sun is just about to crack over the horizon there. And I wanted to really emphasize the sun. I didn't really care about, you know, the foliage and the grass and things of that nature, because that wasn't really interesting. So this is what I did. I added a color board again, right, to set my tone, right? And I really was aggressive with pulling down the shadows, because I didn't really want to see a lot of the grass. I really wanted to focus in on the sky and keeping the detail of the sky. So as you can see, if I go back or reset my exposure, the exposure looks like this normal, or when it was untampered with or unchanged. And then what I did was I brought the shadows down, and I brought the midtones or midsection down, and then it really brought this warmth and brought the image together. And then all I did was I just added some film convert to that, I added two other things. I added a custom LUT, right? And that custom LUT added that warmth, right? Added that extra warmth, and then it also brought up the blacks and kind of flattened and softened the blacks a bit, so we could have that outline. And then I added film convert in there. Now, when you add film convert in there, again, the thing I love about film convert is it kind of blends all the tones together and makes it one cohesive piece. So that's how I did that. So let's look at it from the beginning here. We have just a uncolored, unadjusted shot. It looks slightly overexposed, but it's actually exposed really well. I brought the blacks down, right? I didn't crush them, but I brought them down low enough. And then I added my custom LUT. Once I put my custom LUT in there, all I had to do was add the film convert to finish it off. Well, that's the end of this tutorial. I hope you learned a little bit about how I approach Zcam E2 footage, how I grade it, how I color correct it, and maybe you can integrate some of these skills into your workflow. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel. I am making dope videos for you so that you can thrive and be successful and be creative. If you have questions, please leave those questions below in the comments section. I promise you I will answer those questions for you. If it's about the footage I used, or if it's about the filters or cameras I used, or the different types of features in Final Cut Pro, which I've been using and I've been editing with and color grading with, any of those sort of questions, hit me up about those. And lastly, just stay creative, stay positive, and stay safe, guys. Until the next time, peace.